Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. Now, there are dozens of products designed specifically for the wargaming and modelling hobby that we can spend our money on, whether that be a Green Stuff World airbrush here for base coating your models, whether that's going to be a Red Grass Games painting handle in this case for sticking our models on top while we're painting, or whether it's going to be one of the many thousands of wash effects and things you can buy. I'm going to talk today through a various amount of things that aren't really designed for the hobby that I've found have absolutely changed my hobby life, whether that be recent discoveries or something I've used for years. Now, I suppose the journey starts off with this. This has been my wet palette for probably 10 years now, and I have moved away from it, mostly because one of the things that make it, which is my parchment roll, ideal for making your own homemade wet palette, and I do have a video on that on the channel. I've actually ran out of parchment, and I could have gone out and bought some more parchment for a couple of quid and carried on using this wet palette, but I thought, you know what, I'm actually going to buy a wet palette, which I'm currently testing several at the moment, and that has led me down a number of hobby discoveries. So for years I've put, anything I'm doing dry brushing on, I just put it on the top of this palette. I've dry brushed on a piece of paper and done that, and I've never really enjoyed dry brushing. That goes back for years. Losing this wet palette with a lid that you can dry brush on and moving on to a number, and this is just one, this is the Green Stuff World wet palette. So I'm currently using it at the moment, really enjoying it. Maybe do a full review later on the channel, but losing this one, which is quite easy to dry brush off the top and also put washes on because it's got a little lip, and moving on to this meant I had to find another solution. Now, friends of mine for years have banged on about how makeup brushes will change your life in terms of dry brushing, and I do agree. Maybe it's a topic from the video, but you will see hundreds of videos online about how using a makeup brush for scenery, in this case for this one, or onto standard models, and you've seen this brush popping up on the channel quite a lot recently, will change your dry brushing game. And that's not really what this is about, but this is a couple of different brands, literally spares that my daughter and my wife have had, and I've stolen if they've not wanted to use them, and it has changed how I dry brush. And I was using these before getting rid of my old wet palette, but was never really happy with the material I was dry brushing on, because when you use toilet paper, for example, I'm just going to pull some from the side here, and this is just how I can dry my brushes. When you dry brush onto this stuff, and you take your paint off the side of the palette and you clean it off on here, it goes a little bit chalky, you lose some of the consistency, and also until you put that on the model, you don't really get a sense of how it's actually going to go. So I'm going to introduce you to what has changed my dry brushing game, and it's this. This is a dog food toy. So this is from the pet section of a local shop, cost about £2, and it's meant that you smear on peanut butter or a bit of dog food or whatever to entertain your dog while it licks off the food from there. But it is amazing for dry brushing. So I'm going to just do a very, very quick example of how I work it. Nothing massive, but I'll just grab some bone white, and this is literally how I've been using it. Maybe onto, you can see here, a bit of residue of the white here. Stick it onto a section of that, and then when you then prep your model for dry brushing, I'll use a small dry brush here, you can load your brush onto here, smear it around, and you're not really worried about where, and then test it on the little knobbles, in this case dog paw sized, and then you're getting a sense of how much is actually coming off before you then deploy that onto the model. One of the big curses I've found dry brushing before is you'll dip it in, you'll rub it about, and then you'll go straight to your model, and you'll think you've got enough off, and you'll rub it off on the paper, and you'll go, oh, that's absolutely fine. You'll come to the model, and there's way too much on, exactly like that. Whereas the advantage of this kind of section, you can keep rubbing until you can tell enough is coming off. And then when you deploy it on the model, you go, right, well, that's okay, I'm happy with that. Deploy it on the model, and you've got a nice, gentle highlight. Oh, that's come out quite well, that Union Jack there. Very well, nice. So, game changer. The other thing about this, with it being made of this silicone product, is when it's dry, yes, you can do a bit of a scrub to get it off, but actually the paint doesn't stick to silicone very easily. So you can see if you just bend it, it flakes off there. So you can actually end up pulling off big chunks of paint in a big slab, and that's a bit of fun as well. So that's product number one. Linking to that, I've also used this for painting metallics. You'll see the metallics there. So I'm going to take you through the second very strange product that I've used for years and years and years that will change your life when it comes to the hobby, and it's these cocktail sticks. Groundbreaking things I'm talking through here today, I'm sure you'll agree. But if you come to your Games Workshop paint pot in particular, and you open a paint pot, you could shake it around, but if you shake it and you do all those kind of things, which I do sometimes, what it can do if you're manually shaking it rather than using a machine, it will throw paint up all around in here, which you can see there is some, but it'll throw paint up all around in here and start gumming it up. But if you don't shake it, I don't know if you can see in that pot, it's kind of split because it's a metallic paint, so you need to stir it. Now you could just whack a brush in there, give that a stir around, but doing that you will end up ruining one of your brushes eventually, like you will see here, because the paint will get all into the ferrule, it'll get everywhere and make a right mess. So super cheap cocktail stick, stir it around, and you've got your nice paint mix. Then you can use that to take off here, and you can put it onto your palette, you can whatever, and you will waste very little paint because you can then actually take the paint from the end of that, and for the first 10 minutes of you painting, or a few minutes, you can use the end of your brush to get the paint that you want off there, keep that on there. So less waste, less whatever, less chance of ruining your brushes. The other thing you may have noticed recently, and I've shown it on a couple of videos, especially when I've been building a Titan, you can use this end of this rather than sticking your finger onto a model that you might be building, rather than holding on a piece of model like you've seen. So this is all green stuff parts I've been sticking onto my Titan. You'll see in other videos I've actually shown myself rather than just holding it on, which is what I generally do to make it look like that's how I work. You take your cocktail stick and you can then hold that on, and the glue will go onto the cocktail stick, but super glue doesn't bond as well to wood as it does to human skin, so saves you there. Nice little hobby tool that you might want to just keep around the side of your desk. Now, linking on to the little dog tray, and this is really for dry brushing or using metallics, so that's what I use this for. Another thing you've seen me do quite a lot on the channel is use contrast paints, something I've been experimenting with for a few months, and quite often you'll see me pop this open and I will paint straight from the pot, really because it's demonstrating initially how I used it. But I have found over the months I've been using it, once you start getting down like halfway through the contrast paints, which I am in a lot of these, if you paint with them open all the time, especially in a warm house or a warm environment, they do start to evaporate slightly, and it changes how they work, obviously because they're going slightly thicker. Now, I did pick up some contrast medium to fix that problem out, but actually I thought that's a strange thing to be doing. How would I stop it happening? And this is not my idea. I have seen this on a number of hobby channels. I'm going to show you through something that has really been a game changer. Now, this is a little fidget popper. It's made of the same materials, the silicone of this little dog toy thing here, and it's little silicone poppers. Now, the great thing about this is that it's a little pool to put your wash in, whereas previously, I've used this and quite a lot will have gone around here and spread all across the mat. These little self-contained pockets are great for containing either your contrast paints or a wash if you're putting a wash in, whether you're doing a flesh shade or anything like that really, or if you're painting with a metallic and you don't want to go down the dog food tray because you don't do a lot of dry brushing, you can bang your metallic paints in here and work it in exactly the same way. Now, what is great about this is when you put any paint in here, you can see there's a little bit of contrast paint that I put in there just earlier. You can then put your contrast paint in there. You can paint from this little well that you'll have then created nice and easily. I'm not going to demonstrate that because I don't want to paint, but it's nice and easy to do that. You're controlling that paint you're using. Your main pot is not evaporating. There's less chance of you then knocking over the Games Workshop paint pot. Not something I've done for years. I shouldn't have said that out loud. I realise that. Not done for years, but it's easy to do, but it also stops them evaporating. And then once you've finished, these things are really easy to clean. Now, this contrast paint here isn't actually quite dry yet, but some of it is, but I'll try and demonstrate anyway. Once you're finished with it, if you then pop the popper out like this, it won't flake off because it isn't dry, but if you see where it is dry, you can see it just literally flakes off the dry parts, rather than having to scrub and wash. And obviously when it's fully dry, it is a really easy thing to clean. You literally, I've never washed this one. This thing here I have washed a couple of times because it's a flat surface and I've used normal paints on it, and I've just put my hand in metallic paints. This leads me on to the next hobby essential that is an everyday lifesaver to have next to your hobby table. Trouble with this kind of thing happening, and normally I would be quite careful about that, but when this sort of thing happens, if you're then getting up, if you're then going to if you're getting up, you're going to your bathroom, your whatever, walking upstairs to the kitchen, I don't know where your hobby space is, coming in from your garage, you're going to get this on everything you touch. Now, lifesaver, some sort of antibacterial wipe, whether that be a hand wipe or in this question, these are actually surface wipes, but I don't find I react to it, you may do. Having these things by the side of your table, absolute lifesaver, because clean yourself up, and then move on with your hobby time without making an absolute and just total mess of your desk. Now, a lot of people don't mind that. You know, I've watched a lot of painters that do, by the end of their session, have their hands absolutely covered in paint. I'm not one of those. I personally like to keep myself clean as I'm going. I just don't like paint all over my hands, but there we go. Another absolute lifesaver. And in terms of when you're working, particularly with milliput and green stuff and things like that, keeping your hands clean as you go, absolutely vital to not ruin your conversion project, or that's what I feel. So, inadvertent segue there for exploring my desk for weird hobby products. So you've got your paint ready, you are ready to paint, you're ready to get chucking some stuff down onto the table. How are you going to hold your model? Now, we've just seen the purchased handles. You might want to make your own, and I've done a whole video on painting handles, but one of the key bits of equipment for doing your own or doing some other things I'm going to talk about is this stuff. Now, this is blue tack. I've got lumps of this all over the place. Absolute game changer when it comes to a number of hobby things. So it's a simple, I mean, everyone must have seen what blue tack is. You know, if you've ever been to school, it's all over school walls, etc. Yeah, lifesaver. For one, you can make your own painting handle by sticking a bit of blue tack on top of there and then grabbing your model and sticking it on top. And the other thing that you'll have noticed of doing big projects, I'll pull an arm off the Titan again while we're here. So if you're doing a big project like a piece of a Titan, or you're doing a conversion piece, this stuff is ideal for sticking bits of model together and test fitting before you actually do it. So absolute game changer when it comes to really being useful in your hobby journey. Having just mentioned conversions, obviously I now want to talk about two things that I use a mountain of, green stuff and milliput. Now, I'm not going to go through what these are because that's not the purpose of this video. This is about non-hobby things you might want to use. But if you've ever watched any of my conversion videos, and there's a lot on the channel, you'll know that I use a lot of this stuff, and we've just talked about how it'll stick to your fingers, you'll make a mess, and you might want to wipe to one side, that kind of thing. But this is another piece that's going to be very, very useful for you. This is Vaseline. This is just a petroleum jelly. And it's really meant for making your lips soft and whatever, and it is great for that. So if you ever go to the gym, I don't as much as I should, but I do, you end up with these horrible rough bits on your hands. Bit of Vaseline on there keeps your hands all all nice and fresh. But it's fantastic for putting on before you start using the model, especially for conversions, because this will stop milliput and green stuff excessively sticking to your fingers. Now, just gonna make sure you rub it in and you're not getting it slimy anywhere, and this is why painting handles come in use, because when this is on your fingers you don't want to touch the paint scheme. But when you're converting, this will stop milliput and green stuff sticking to your fingers, and it will make your life much, much easier. Sounds like a really silly little thing, but small things like this, using Vaseline on your fingers to stop green stuff sticking to them and milliput when you're working, will make your life working with milliput and green stuff a lot easier. You can also use this onto equipment, so you can rub this on the end of sculpting tools, you can put this on the end of model like rolling pins if you're using that for smoothing out anything, and it will really make your life an awful lot easier. You will see me use it on a lot of my conversion videos. So really that's it. That's the kind of things around my desk that I think are non-hobby that have changed my hobby life. So your little dog food mat for putting your normal paints on, putting your dry brushing on, really has been a game changer for me. Your cocktail sticks, absolute lifesaver for stirring paint, for mixing things up, just for sticking bits on models. This thing, it's been wonderful. You see it's dried a bit now. I've just catapulted a bit of that off onto my table, but you can see how easy these things are to clean because the paint just comes off. Blue tack, every hobbyist's dream, and as it says on here, blue hacks, what do you do with yours? Well, I make painting handles and I stick wargaming figures together. Vaseline, always your friend when doing any kind of conversions. And finally, don't forget your toothbrush. This is just looked to one side and I've seen it. Cleaning up your hobby spaces afterwards is great, so never throw away an old toothbrush. The amount of things you can clean and scrub up with a hobby is fantastic. So that is my kind of very strange rambly video on stuff around my hobby desk that is nothing to do with the hobby. Now what's yours? Because you're bound to have more bits of equipment than you use than this that is non-hobby equipment that has changed your hobby life. So look, share those ideas down below, drop some comments on there, because I'm sure you've got something out there that will also change my hobby life. These are just a few from around my desk that I think you might find interesting. Hopefully will elevate your kind of hobby game. Right, well, thank you everybody. Hope you enjoyed that little bit of a ramble. Like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, and I'll see you on another video.